let's not beat around the bush. You and I both know why we're here. The announcement of the 992 Porsche 911 GT3 RS. And the live stream went up while I was at work. So I couldn't watch it live. Well, I could have watched it live, but I refused to. I also could have maybe done this as a live stream if I wasn't working, but I couldn't do it as a live stream because I was working. But if I wasn't working, I still wouldn't have done it as a live stream because I don't do live streams. But what I am going to do is watch it now live. But for you, it won't be live because you'll have it. But you're watching me do it live. So technically, and is it a coincidence that I'm wearing my brand new Carrera t-shirt from Blipshift, blipshift.com? Blipshift, send the check. No, it's not a coincidence. I just got this a couple of days ago, and I really love the shirts that they make. Super comfortable. This is not a sponsored video. Well, it is sponsored by my wallet because my wallet paid for these shirts. So courtesy of my wallet, but maybe they'll sponsor me one day. In the meantime, would you believe that up until about 2 years ago, I didn't even know what a GT3 was. Now here I am fawning over it. To be precise, I'm fawning over the 991.2 GT3/RS, which is crazy because when I saw the 992 Carrera the first time, I was like, this has perfected, at least what I felt, were all the tiny little flaws of the 991 exterior design. And the interior, I never used to like the 991 interior. And now as time is going on, I'm finding myself really wanting a 991.2 GT3 or RS. The great thing about this conversation, about me being picky, is I can't have either. So I get to be picky in my mind all I want. Anyway, the 992 GT3 RS, I have no idea what it looks like. I've seen the spy shots on the Nürburgring on like Instagram and stuff, but other than that, no idea what it looks like. I'm gonna try to give my thoughts and see how I feel about it, and then send an email to Porsche with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, because I know they're waiting. Here we go.
The 996 GT3 RS.
Yes, the first 996 RS was a homologation special to homologate parts that we needed in the race cars that you were driving back then.
By the way, Andy Proninger, the number of interviews I've heard of this guy, I cannot tell you the number of times I've heard homologation special. It just sounds so strange to me now. Anyway, also that green GT3 RS, oh my gosh, in Miami blue, I want it. Please, now, thank you.
Next one was the current one, I would say.
So now before they go on to the 991.2, the thing that's so incredible about the 991.1, and it's one of the things that makes me really loyal to a company like Porsche. I say loyal, I don't have anything of theirs, but it makes me a big fan of theirs because of how quickly they tackle their issues. Like the 997 ended with the Metzger engine, and that is considered by so many people to be the engine to have. The DFI engine that came after that, AP hands down says that it's just so much better. And to me, from what I've heard, it sounds so much better. But specifically, the RS is important. The 991.1 RS is important because of the fact that that was the engine that had to fix the problems with the non-RS 991.1 GT3, with their valve issues and the spontaneous combustion. For a company to be on the hook like that and to come out with an engine that puts out just even more just security and power, and it sounds incredible. And the fact that they stuck with it into the 992, and also because it's contemporary for me. Anyway.
My new love has a name. It's 992 GT3 RS, definitely.
That's a big wing. The hair on my neck is standing up right now. Okay, before they even say anything, I was worried about the RS. It still has cues that make me say that the 991.2 looks better, and I just saw it right now. I do really like the fact that it's a throwback to the 996 with the white and the red wheels, which it also had the blue wheels. It's metallicized, it's a bit more modernized. It's like the perfect homage to that, which made me pause and ask the question of why did they pick now to do the homage? And then I was like, oh, because this might be the last normally aspirated one. And I just hope that's not the case. Keep moving forward. The one thing I will say is the side profile that they showed looked really nice. The wing actually looks better on this than it does on the non-RS GT3.
All the exits, all the air vents, all the flaps are there for a reason. There's nothing fake, there's nothing exaggerated.
The 3-radiator layout is now a mono-radiator concept like we use in our uncompromising race car, like the GT3R.
Oh, that's so nice.
And just look at the father of all wings. It's towering so high above the car, it's even a little bit higher than the roofline of the car.
Plus side to that, it shouldn't affect your visibility when you look out the rearview mirror. So I think there's three major areas to discuss with this car after looking at it and hearing about it. One is performance, second is styling, and third is actually really taking a moment to discuss who this car is for. And I say that as if there's a debate about it, but I think the reason why I'm saying it so emphatically is because I think that line is much less blurred now. In terms of performance, not a surprise. They didn't go that much higher than the current GT3 or the last RS. Last RS was 520 horsepower. This is 525. Not interested in just cranking out more horsepower, but more interested in preserving what they have, making it more lightweight, thereby making it more efficient. And also, you don't need much more than 500 horsepower. Also not surprising thing given the trend was the downforce increase 3 times the last GT3 and twice the last RS. That was a bit expected because of the fact that the current 992 GT3 non-RS is already producing more downforce than the last the 991.2 RS. The interesting thing though is the innovations that they made, and it softened me to the look of it. So let's talk about the look. I still feel like in terms of styling in general, the 992 doesn't tickle me the way the 991.2 in particular, but even the .1, it doesn't hit me the same way. Not that I expected the RS to be subtle, but it's interesting because the last RS is a bit less overstated than this. This because of the fact that it has so many black plastic parts that are apparent, that are doing a job nonetheless. That's kind of a trend I'm not a big fan of in general with cars right now. The interesting things that I noticed about the styling, and I actually was going to mention it before he said it, but things like the door handles and stuff like that. So going with the styling, on the Mule model, you could still tell where those two vents on the hood were. It makes it like, it's like the, you get the black between your eyes here when you're like not sleeping properly and all that stuff. That's the first thought I had when I looked at it. But what I also noticed was the fact that the front nostrils on the 992 GT3 are now gone. And that makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference with those things not there. It actually looks way better. It makes the whole front end look much, much better. And the open front sort of radiator, it fits the style of the RS a lot better. I think that everything else on the car made that look a lot more appropriate. Moving on backwards, it's so interesting what they did with that they've made that specifically functional in order to direct hot air away from the engine intakes. And those fins up top are not actually working as like the same as end plates. They're actually keeping the air that's pushed to the side. That's fascinating. I wonder how it's going to look in other colors. The thing that scares me with the other colors is all of the black accents, or not accents, but those functional pieces, the aerodynamic pieces. That might throw it off a little bit, or a lot. And I don't think you could, even if they had an option for you to paint those, I don't think you could get away with them not being apparent. And then that wing. When I saw the wing start to adjust, and I was like, oh my gosh, are they going to have DRS? And then he mentioned DRS. And that is what leads me to who this car is for. Sitting inside the car, when they sat inside the car, not me, and you see 3 more knobs. one controlling the degree of your traction control, one controlling the degree of your active stability and your suspension settings and your damper settings. I felt this with the 992 GT3, that they were really pushing away from the people who were just gonna street the car and like have it just to flex. And this is even more of that. Like, there's still gonna be people who are just gonna buy the car and flex. There are gonna be people who are gonna buy the car and it's gonna sit and do nothing. These things make both of those seem more silly to do that. Like, this is really meant to be driven now. And, you know, there are people who collect race cars and all that stuff, but that's a bit different because you collect race cars that have a history in terms of that specific car won races or this or that happened and they've been driven in and now they're sort of retired. This is a brand new car that people might not put any miles on, and that is even more a shame now than it was in the previous generation ones. For obvious reasons. I mean, it has so many things that are purely functional. It has so many things that if you're not using that, why do you have the RS? That's the thing. There's so many things on this that are like, if you're not utilizing them, why do you have an RS? And you could make that argument for the GT3, but they make the GT3 as a road car that can be taken on the track. You know, Chris Harris mentioned when he was reviewing the 991 RS that everything feels like 10% better. Everything feels a slight bit tighter. The engine's a slight note higher. This is almost like jumping into another lane. This is a big deal, and it's almost like it's an understatement for it to be called an RS. You know, it's funny because AB talks about in other interviews that he sort of commandeered the RS name from the actual racing division of Porsche and then was like, well, you can just call that the RSR, and then used the RS for this marketing path. And some people might have said that about the previous RSs, but this one, I mean, this is very clear. What the previous RSs did was lighten the weight of the car and add a bit of power. Like, what? You're not driving a car on the road that has a DRS button. Thinking about, like, if I had the opportunity, if someone came to me and said, you get an allocation, you can either have an allocation or we've got a couple of GT3s and RSs here with low mileage and you can pick whichever one you want. If I ever happened to have that, I ask myself the question of which one I would pick. It would still be something I'd probably drive on the road occasionally just because I'd want to enjoy it. This thing, it has to be on the track. And I wonder how it's going to affect who's going to buy it and use it. Probably won't affect this. I mean, because the people who can get their hands on it, I mean, there's already a limited pool of people, but like, they've made it very clear. It's almost like they've made it difficult for people to make the argument to drive it on the road. And it's funny because the 992 GT3, when it came out, a lot of people were worried about how stiff it was compared to the 991. It looks like an incredibly interesting car to drive. I hope one day I get a chance to somehow own one of the GT3s or RSs. That would be incredible. And I would want to do it justice. And I think that's my final thought, in that I would want to do justice to a car like that. I definitely would want a 991 or later. See if I'm around on this earth, or if internal combustion's around on this earth for the 993. But I would want to get a car that I could feel like I'm doing it some justice. And I don't know if I could ever do that for a 992 RS. I don't know. Anyway, my heart is still very, very much attached to the 991.2 GT3. I hope you got to see and enjoy that reveal, and it'll be interesting to watch all of the people on YouTube that will get to test drive it. That probably won't be me, but I'm going to try anyway, because who knows?